We are very much aware of the dire living conditions in Gaza. I'm regularly visiting the area to get an own idea of the situation, and we are fully aware that not a lot of development and humanitarian needs exist. Within our huge development cooperation program, we try to do both, improve the living conditions of the people in Gaza and beyond, also here in the West Bank, and help to prepare for a final statehood.
Germany plays a very important role at the political and economic level around the world because of its status in the continent of Europe and at the EU. Germany's support for the Palestinians' rights has never changed, supporting the two-state solution in accordance with the international community and United Nations resolutions. In order to talk more about that, I have with me the representative of Germany to Palestine, Mr. Oliver Owcza. Welcome to our program, sir.
Ahlan wa sahlan. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We know of the German people and the German government support for the Palestinian people and the projects that are supported by Germany in the Palestinian territory. And the last support was provided for Gaza in the field of energy. If you tell us about this support and how it helps the Palestinians continue to build their institutions and continue their life.
Yes, let me start by saying that we are very much aware of the dire living conditions in Gaza. I'm regularly visiting the area to get an own idea of the situation, and we are fully aware that not a lot of development and humanitarian needs exist. Within our huge development cooperation program, we try to do both, improve the living conditions of the people in Gaza and beyond, also here in the West Bank, and help to prepare for a final statehood. The program you are referring to, which we had the honor to witness the agreement with the Prime Minister last week, aims of building two mid-size photovoltaic solar plants that will produce energy to, on the one hand, power a desalination plant and thus provide clean, potable water, and at the same time provide energy for households in northern and also in a part of southern Gaza, and thus really contributes to improved living conditions of up to 250,000 people.
Yeah. So as we are talking about support for the Palestinian people in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in the Palestinian territory in general. And we know that there's going to be the ISraelPalestine conference very soon. What role Germany is going to have in that conference, and what expectations does it have?
Well, we welcome any conference, any gathering where Israelis and Palestinians meet and discuss, in the case of the ISraelPalestine, together with many friends and international partners. We know that the focus of the ISraelPalestine will be on technical matters. It is not a political conference, but we believe it is important technical matters that will help also to bring progress in areas of day-to-day life for the many Palestinians, like connecting the economies, improving water connectivity, or in helping digitalize cash payments for Palestinians in many areas. As Germany, we have been invited by the Norwegian facilitators of the ISraelPalestine to host a working group on the PA and budget and its fiscal reforms. And we aim to help the PA representatives in this working group to convey the message that there is serious reform plans on the budget and thus generate international support to that end.
Yes, and sir, when we talk about economic aid and about humanitarian aid, it's also important to talk about the political support for the Palestinians towards achieving peace, statehood, and stability. If you tell us about Germany's political position of what's happening now vis-a-vis supporting peace based on the two-state solution.
Yes. Let me underline, we are fully aware how important that is to the Palestinian people. And it goes without saying that any nation has a right to statehood. And as Germany, for decades, we have been supporting and we continue to support the objective of a two-state solution with an independent, democratic and contiguous, so to say, connected Palestinian state. We do believe, however, that must be the product of a negotiated solution with taking the security interests of Israel into account and negotiating the open questions stemming from the Oslo conference. That's the objective. We know this is an ambitious objective at this point of time. And as I said before, on a day-to-day basis, we keep supporting Palestinians in their progressing towards institutions for eventual statehood.
Yes, sir. The situation today in the Palestinian territory, including Jerusalem, is very volatile. A lot of violence, a lot of attacks by the Israeli occupation forces and police against the worshippers in Jerusalem. Today, a Palestinian boy was shot dead in the town of Jenin in North occupied West Bank. Yesterday in Jericho, another young man. So what role can the German government play in order to press the Israeli government to stop its incursions into the Palestinian towns and the attacks I mentioned?
Yes, we share the concern of any form of excessive violence, and we have been following the events in the holy month of Ramadan that coincided with important festivities of our Jewish friends and the Christian Easter holidays. And the subsequent escalations and repeated violences we have been following with great concern. It goes without saying, we condemn any violation of basic human rights and call all sides to measure their responses to such acts. Yes, and we talk to both sides. We talk to the Palestinian Authority and we talk to the Israeli government to that end, to find ways to overcome an excessive use of violence by certain radical elements and rather return to a peaceful approach.
Yes, and when we talk about the Palestinian cause and what's happening these days in Palestine and what happens in the world, we had to mention the Russian-Ukrainian crisis, and we see all the support provided by almost all the world, the United States, or the European countries for the Ukrainian people in their fight against the Russian forces, their defense of Ukraine. But when we talk about the Palestinian struggle, the support takes another form. It is like humanitarian aid based. So don't you think that, Mr. Ambassador, the Ukrainian crisis would change the form of support that the international community provides for the Palestinian people and to press Israel more to take concrete steps on the ground to end its occupation for the land occupied in 1967, of course, in line with the international community resolutions?
Yes. No, I'm grateful you raised this issue. And of course, I understand the background of your question. However, for us, for Germany, and I think it goes for our European partners too, the Ukrainian crisis, which actually should be called a Russian aggression on a peaceful and independent sovereign Ukrainian state, is a challenge of a different nature. The current humanitarian toll, the daily numbers of civilians killed, of civilians made refugees, made internally displaced persons, the rather credible reports on severe human rights violations of enormous numbers have an urgency that require a specific response by the international community. Also, the implication of this conflict where it takes place has a different geopolitical dimension because many countries in Europe, in the United States, but also in Asia feel directly affected by it. So it does require this unified response by the international community. This is why we also would like to see from the Palestinian Authority a clear support of this emerging international coalition condemning the violation of the sovereignty of Ukraine by Russia. At the same time, yes, it is true, we should respect, or we should respond to violation of human rights or of the inviolability of territorial integrities elsewhere. And I think the awareness that this requires a new look on more established conflicts is very much there. But the urgency of the Ukraine conflict is, I think, evident. And it's also evident that it will impact here the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian people, inter alia by the rising food prices. Yeah? Yes. So I think we have a shared interest to find a peaceful solution to this conflict in order to mitigate the negative effects it has on the whole world and including on Palestinians as soon as possible.
Yes, my final question to you, sir. The Palestinian president and the Palestinian leadership has always called for international peace conference in order to end the conflict. What is your take on that, the German government, Germany position of that?
Well, as I said, we are in support of a negotiated two-state solution, but that requires two parties willing to do it. As this point of time, this is not apparent, which does not include that we try to encourage any form of interaction. And we were talking about the AHLC, which will bring together Israeli and Palestinian official representatives. We believe any form of meeting of economic or cultural or educational representatives from both sides to improve the mutual understanding, to develop forms of cooperation is helpful. And we need to be prepared as soon as a window for a meaningful negotiation is opening. We need to be prepared from that and on site. And this is what we are committed to keep working for.
Representative of Germany to Palestine, Mr. Oliver Owcza, it has been a great pleasure having you in the studios of Palestine TV. Thank you.
Shukran jazilan.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And from you, Saman Azal, have a nice time.